Hello, good morning, students. I am Dr. Tejendra again with you. A new video lecture. Today's our topic is brain, comparative anatomy and its evolution in vertebrates. So let's start. It's about me. These are some books which I want to suggest you that if you want to go for the further reading, then you have to go through these books. Now I am starting our lecture. So what is the brain? Brain is an organ of our nervous system, and the nervous system have three parts: central nervous system, autonomic nervous system, and peripheral nervous system. So brain is part of central nervous system. Central nervous system have mostly two parts. First one is brain and second one is spinal cord. Okay, so our today's topic is brain. So I will discuss only about brain. It is located in the head, and its origin is postulated that it is originating from the anterior end of the nerve, and later it was discovered, and later it was clearly researched and demonstrated that yes, it is. So, from the anterior end of the embryonic neural tube, that's time it is originating, and its functions are like perception, motor control, activating or regulate muscles, planning, executive function, sensation, memory, learning, speech control, dictionary, arousal, homeostasis, motivation, neuronal secretion, neurohormone secretion, etc. Many more functions are there, and I will discuss mostly functions in this lecture also with their parts. Okay. So these are parts of brain. So vertebrate brain have it's not only a single part, it's a complex structure, and there are many parts. I think you might not heard about all these parts and its functions. Each and every part have different functions on the basis of their structures and on the basis of their evolution and origin. So vertebrate brain have three major parts. First one is prosencephalon. It is called as forebrain because it is located at the anterior, and fore means before side. So that's why it is called as forebrain. Middle portion is called as midbrain or mesencephalon, and last and posterior portion is called as hindbrain or rhombencephalon. Prosencephalon have again divided into two parts: telencephalon and diencephalon. Telencephalon is also have two parts: rhynencephalon and cerebral hemisphere. I'll explain one by one later on. Second, diencephalon is also divided into three parts: epithalamus, thalamus, and hypothalamus. Because epithalamus is on the upper side, that's why it is called epithalamus, and hypo means lower side. Okay. Now mesencephalon, it have only one type of part, that is crura cerebri, and rhombencephalon is divided into two parts: metencephalon and myelencephalon. Metencephalon is have cerebellum, whereas myelencephalon have medulla oblongata. Okay. Now I am coming to the first, rhynencephalon. Rhyn means nose. Generally we know an animal, rhinoceros, right? So why we call them rhino? Because he has a like structure on their nose, and that's why it is called as rhino, right? So rhynencephalon, it means uh, this part is related to, or this part control our activities related to the nose. Okay, here first ventricle is also present. Its portion is related to olfactory structure and paleocortex. Okay, second one is cerebral hemisphere. Cerebral hemisphere have second ventricle, corpus striata, basal ganglia. Corpus striata is generally found in lower vertebrates, whereas basal ganglia is present in the higher and more developed vertebrates. Corpus callosum that connects to two hemisphere parts. Neocortex, this is more evolved, and prophylaxis, we will discuss it later on. Epithalamus, it have third ventricle, habenule, and pineal body. Okay, hypothalamus have hypothalamic nuclei, optic chiasma, median eminence, infundibular stalk, pituitary, succus vasculosus, mammillary body, anterior choroid plexus. Okay, and midbrain are related to the lobes of auditory and optic. Cerebral pedunculus. Cerebellum have pons varolai and trapezoid body. Medulla oblongata have fourth ventricle and restiform bodies and pyramids. Okay, so this is complete classification of our brain. Now these are functions in brief. I will discuss later on, as we will discuss about its anatomy. Then we will again we will learn that how they function and why they function. But this is simple pictogram that you can easily identify that, okay, which part contains which type of function. Okay, so brain structure is different from animal to animal and from one taxon to the another taxon, but these are the simple functions. Like I mentioned here in blue color, there are some names like FL means frontal lobe. Okay, temporal lobe, here pons, medulla oblongata, cerebellum, olfactory lobe, occipital lobe, parietal lobe, here motor and sensory. These are two cortex, motor cortex and sensory cortex. So these are some important parts, and every part have different function. Like suppose frontal lobe, it contains functions related to the memory, concentration, judgment, problem solving, planning, personality, emotions, speech. Okay, so every function have different every part have different function. Okay, so in spite of these, you can take a snapshot and remind in mind and remember. But in spite of these, I here not mentioned, but there are two different parts which are more important too. These are, one is Broca's area and one another is Wernicke's area. So Broca area is related to the making of a speech, whereas Wernicke's area is related to dictionary. Okay, suppose like me, I was in my childhood, I was not know any language. Okay, but during the course of time, I learned one language and then another. Okay, so this is the some process of learning, and it takes time. So whenever I was learning a language, then I was also learning that how to make some emotions and some different gestures of my mouth, different gestures of my face, so that I can speak that type of word. Okay, so these all are based on the these all are controlled by the Broca's area. Means Broca area control that how our gazer or how our activity of brain, how our activity of the mouth and parts of mouth, so that we can speak a letter. Okay, and our next area, it decides and it think some words for us, so that's why it is called as dictionary. Okay, so all these parts like suppose parietal lobe is collect information, and it also senses for the pain and touch. It also recognize our orientation, that how we are standing. It helps in speech, reading. Okay, like temporal lobe, it it related to hearing, smell, long-term memory, visual processing, recognition. Whereas pons and medulla oblongata or brain stem, it related to the alert and warning. And cerebellum is related to the fear, pleasure, attention, language. Okay, occipital lobe is helps to us visual processing and dreams in night. Okay, so all these functions are works in different areas. Okay, in spite of these, some works are also related to the our spinal cord, but spinal cord is very fast as compared to the brain, and they works for the reflexes, and brain is works for the thinking, executing, and memorizing all these things. Okay, so it is related to the learning, etc. Now coming to the evolution of brain. Evolution of brain has a specific plan. Okay, if you go through one by one all these organisms, then you will find that okay, yes, they have different type of brain, and they all are originated in a fascinated manner. Okay, so like first one is lamprey and cyclostome. Here I mentioned all these names, and later we will discuss that how it modified. Okay, so in the cyclostome brain, we can see here, first of all, upper side. Here you can see that epiphysis is present in between the both these olfactory and cerebrum lobes. Okay, and there are two olfactory bulbs, and uh, uh, in the end portion of this olfactory lobe, there is attached cerebrum, and then optic lobe, cerebellum, and then medulla oblongata, and then spinal cord. Okay, so this is the basic structure of brain was present in the lamprey or cyclostome, but after that, in the feces, means like contracthes and ostricthes, it is sometimes changed. And what was changes there? Olfactory bulb and olfactory lobe are presenting in the upper side area. You can see here OLFI written in abbreviation. And after this, I mentioned epiphysis. Epiphysis is in between both of these structures. You can find a small structure which is here, and then third ventricle, then cerebellum, then again medulla oblongata. Okay, so these are some parts, and now in the last picture of the ostricthes, you can see that olfactory structure is more originated, and its evolution was more. Okay, so it is stressed higher, and olfactory bulb forms on the upper end, and then it make the elongated structure, and then here cerebral region distinguished from this olfactory region, and it is separated Hence, whereas in case of the lamprey or cyclostome, it was not clearly like that. Okay, but in case of ostrich, it is clearly, you can see here. And after both of these, you will find a small single circle-like structure is present here in the birds or ostriches, that is medulla cerebellum. Okay, and after this cerebellum there is medulla oblongata and spinal cord. In case of frog or amphibia, you can see here olfactory bulbs, olfactory lobes, and then here epithelium is also epiphysis is present in between these cerebral hemisphere. Cerebral hemisphere are now here divided, and then here is thalamus and optical lobes, and then here cerebellum, medulla oblongata. Okay, so if you see from amphibia to snake, snake to chicken, and a human, then you can find out that from cyclostome to Pisces and cyclostome to amphibian reptiles and aves and mammalia. If you go through here, then you will find that a portion of cerebrum is continuously enlarging, whereas portion of olfactory lobe or olfactory bulb, olfactory structures means, or we can say that rhinencephalon is continuously reducing. So one portion is reducing, that is rhinencephalon, and another portion is continuously enlarging, that is cerebral hemisphere. Okay, so cerebrum portion is continuously enlarging, and after the evolutionary continuous process, and in the mammals, in case of humans, you can find that all the portion are get entrapped into it, means all these portions are just covered by this cerebral hemisphere, and the cerebral hemisphere portion is very large in the mammals. Okay, so all these portions are just behind these are beneath this cerebral hemisphere. So whenever cerebrum portion is continuously enlarging, it means that our memory portion, our learning portion is increasing, and that's why we always say that humans are very intelligent. Okay, so its intelligence is based on the cerebrum. Okay, now coming to the general comparison between the animals. Okay, so Pisces have simple and elongated and flat brain. Its length is 3 times higher than compared to the width. Divided into forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Single membrane is also present there, meninx primitiva, and 10 pairs of cranial nerves present. In case of amphibia and Pisces brain are not more differentiated, only some cases, except in only some cases. These are also simple, elongated, flat, 3 times length than as compared to the width, divided into 4 mid and hindbrain. Here, double membrane are present, pyometer and durameter. Meninx is also resembles with we can say that it is related to the pyometer, but exactly not it is pyometer. Okay, so that's why I red marked to the durameter, and 10 pairs of cranial nerves also present here. In case of reptilia, water changing, it is also again simple and elongated, but comparatively larger than both above mentioned, means Pisces and amphibia, and divided again into forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Double membrane are also present here, pyometer and durameter, but here cranial nerves are increased, and these are 12 pairs. In case of Aves, they have complex and comparatively larger than reptilia, means it is again larger than amphibia, Pisces, and reptilia all, and divided into forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Double membrane are also present here, but these double membrane are different. One is pia arachnoid and second one is dura mater, and 12 pairs of cranial nerves are also present here. And in last mammalia, in case of mammalian, most complex type of brain is there, and that's why, as I told you, that we are classified in the most intelligent animals. Why? Because they have larger brain. So most complex, largest and well developed brain. Here length is 2 times higher than width, and divided into forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Triple layers are there: pia mater, arachnoid, and dura mater. Pia arachnoid was present in the birds. Now it gets separated and converts into two brain membranes, two layers. One is pia mater, and another way is arachnoid, and third one is dura mater. So hence we can say that here are three layers, and 12 pairs of cranial nerves are there. Pia mater is simple and thin layer, okay, whereas dura mater is hardened structure. Sorry, not hardened, but its durability is high, means it is strongest, okay, and its thickness is high. That's why it is called as dura mater, okay. And arachnoid we will discuss it later on. Forebrain. Forebrain have, as we discussed in the previous slide, in the parts of brain, uh, we had seen there that forebrain is divided into two parts: telencephalon and diencephalon. So first of all, I am coming to the telencephalon, and telencephalon is also had divided into two parts: the rhinencephalon and cerebral hemisphere. So first one is rhinencephalon. So from lower to higher vertebrates, as when we discuss, then we can see that cerebral hemisphere size is increasing continuously, and that's why it bulges forward and covers the complete another structures, including rhinencephalon. Okay, so that's why rhinencephalon is not showing whenever we see from the dorsal side in case of human or another mammals, but it is clearly showing in the lower vertebrates, like images given in the right side. Okay, changes towards anterior ventral side role in behavior. It means anteroventral, because cerebral hemisphere was in the posterior side as compared to the rhinencephalon or optic lobe, optic bulbs, as you can see in the upper side images. I marked here with the red and green circles. Okay, upper red circle is showing that this is optical region or rhinencephalon, whereas lower circle is showing that this is cerebral hemisphere. So you can see here clearly that rhinencephalon was uh, prominently as that was present in the cerebral hemisphere in case of lower vertebrates. But during the time in the higher animals, cerebral hemisphere continuously enlarges and rhinencephalon continuously reduces, and that's why its structure is very reduced. You can see here four images I took here. Okay, so in the first one you can see here that, okay, in this case this image is I taken from the fish. This is of bonifaces, means ostriches brain, and lower left side image, this is of sheep, means mammalian. So you can see there clearly indicated that higher the cerebral region means lowers the optical region or lowers the rhinencephalon. because covers covers the rhinocephalon. Okay, so what was the role in the coming time, or in the evolutionary process, that why they change this type of behavior and get enlarged their uh, cerebral region? Because its role in behavior, and as I told you that we learned some languages, we make some technologies, all these are behaviors and social behaviors. All these things are related to our behavior, are dependent on this region. Okay, next, rhinocephalon have olfactory bulbs, olfactory tract, and olfactory lobes. I mentioned here with the green circle, which is present on the upper anterior side, on the upper left diagram of the bony fish. Okay, so green circle is showing that it is olfactory bulb. Here, bulb-like structure is present, and next it proceeds toward the uh, posterior sides, and it is called as olfactory tract. And last green circle, which is showing the olfactory lobes. Okay, so this type of structure is called as archipelium, because archipelium means, archi means primitive like. Okay, so archipelium is primitive like structure which are present in the Pisces and amphibian, whereas in case of uh, higher animals, it get changed and it convert into the different structures. Okay, next, hippocampal gyri and piriform area. Hippocampal gyri and piriform area are found in the higher animals. And what are these? You can see in the lower last right side picture. Okay, this is a human's brain, and in the human's brain you can find that there are many clump like structures, and in these clump like structure there are some ventricles are there, there are some uh, trenches like structures are present there, and these structure form some hippocampal gyri and piriform area. Okay, olfactory brain, pallidum tegmental homologue evolution. This is called a special type of evolution, and it is present in the higher animals. It's mean that olfactory brain is get reduced. Pallidal, it is an structure. Tegmental is also an structure, and they get entrapped under the cerebral hemisphere, and that's why it is called as olfactory brain pallidum tegmental homologue evolution. Okay. Forebrain, telencephalon, and cerebral hemisphere. Okay, so we already discussed rhinocephalon. Now coming to the cerebral hemisphere. Cerebral hemisphere in the fishes, each cerebral hemisphere consists of corpus striatum, and corpus striatum is of paleo-striatum type. Striatum plus lateral ventricle plus pallium, they form the cerebral hemisphere. As I discussed in the previous diagram, that there are some pallial structure also present. Okay, so what was the pallium? Pallium is thin roof which is present here. Okay, striatum is most important, and it gets changed during the evolution. Okay, so that's why I mentioned here in the red mark, that so that you can understand that how it changing from one taxa to another. So in the Pisces, the striatum was of paleostriatum type, and this striatum contains some fibers which are coming from the rhinocephalon, and they uh, send signals. Okay, and they send signals to the striatum, and striatum is consist of motor nuclei, and then signals terminates to the motor nuclei of cranial and spinal nerve lastly. Okay, so this is the pathway, means it starts from the rhinocephalon, then go to the striatum, and then go to the cranial or spinal nerve. Next, receptors. Other than olfactory, because I already discussed olfactory in the upper point, that rhinencephalon, because rhinencephalon is related to the olfactory. Okay, other than olfactory receptors are also there, because we have sense capacities. So these senses terminates not into the cranial or spinal nerve nuclei, but it terminates into the mostly at levels lower than the hemisphere. Okay, suppose like optic sensation are there, so it will terminate into the optic lobe and thalamus. If senses are from membranous labyrinth, then it will be terminate into the cerebellum and mesencephalon, whereas these are related to the touch, temperature, pain, means cutaneous, means related to our skin. Whenever you whenever anyone touch to your skin, or you feel any pain, temperature, then this type of receptor or its fiber terminates into the thalamus. In amphibian talon cerebral hemisphere is not more different from the not more different from the Pisces. This is almost similar. So, but its striatum receive more sensory fibers projected from the thalamus. Okay, as compared to the Pisces. In reptiles have additional nuclei constituting a neostriatum. Now you can find the difference between the Pisces, amphibians, and reptiles. Pisces had paleostriatum type. Paleo means primitive type, whereas in reptiles, neostriatum type. Neo means new. Okay, so this is more evolved, more new type of striatum is there, and it receives fibers from the thalamus and cerebral cortex on the surface of the pallium is present, because larger hemisphere is there, and that's why motor activity is hence more, and therefore cerebral cortex is shifted towards the surface of the pallium. Okay. In the birds have additional one more hyperstriatum, means this is third one. Paleostriatum is there, neostriatum is there, and third one is hypostriatum is also there. Means they have more striatum over old striatum, right? So hypostriatum is present over old striatum, and olfactory lobes reduced in size more again, and smell is less important. One point I want to discuss here, that smell is more important for the lower vertebrates, whereas in case of us we have not more important. Okay, although we sense smell, but not much as much like Pisces or amphibian or another animals can do. Their sense capacity is comparatively more higher as compared to us. Okay, so that's why our nostril size is get reduced, whereas in case you see the larger fishes or amphibians, then you will find that their nostrils are comparatively larger, as whenever you compare as the body size and with the nostril size. Okay, but in case of us, our nostril size is very small as compared to our body size, because now in case of us, our behavioral change is not more dependent on the smell. Okay, and same thing in the birds. So they reduced their olfactory lobes, and smell is less important. In case of mammals, telencephalon, its cerebral hemisphere is again, because we discussed in the three taxon, Pisces, Amphibia, Reptilia, but now I'm coming to the next point in mammalian. In mammalian brain, As I told you that mammalian brain is more largest, and it is highly complex structure. That's why it is very important that we have to discuss here, because most importantly, cerebral hemisphere region is enlarging. Okay, and that's why it is very much different from the other organism. So cerebral cortex is most important in the mammalian brain, and mammalian brain contain basal ganglia. So what is basal ganglia? As we discussed in the primitive type of animals like Pisces, there are stratum like paleostratum. Then, in case of reptiles, it changed into the neostratum, and in case of uh, birds, there is more additional one is hyperstratum, and now it gets changed into the basal ganglion. Okay, so basal ganglion is a complex nerve structure, a nerve plexus like structure which is present here, and now it can uh, continuously works like a delay center of data center, like a large data center is there, and it is working for the continuously 24 into 7 times for the relaying data and signals. Okay, so this type of structure is present here. This is the basal ganglia. Cerebral cortex is most important here because it is main center for the highest sensory impulses pass, discriminate, and enjoyment. Okay, because here many sensation coming, and their reflexes, their reflective action is again delivering. Okay, experiences store in memory, so that's why we have large size. It's also work like data center, and because they collect, recall, analyze, correlate, etc. Everything can do. Brain have immense capacity. Okay, thinking part is also there. If we have any problem, then we can solve these problems, we can analyze them. Okay, motor activity starts from the cerebral cortex, and numerous ridges like gyri, grooves, sulci. Okay, these are present here. Ridges are called as gyri, whereas grooves are called as sulci. Okay, you can see in this diagram that some lines I mentioned here, and this is very complex like structure is present here, and these uh, clump like structures forms some ridges and some groove like structures. Okay, so this groove like structure is called as sulci, whereas ridge like structure is gyri. Okay, next one is corpus callosum. Corpus callosum is a thick band of nerve fibers, and it connects to the both cerebral hemisphere. Okay, and they also connected to the cortex regions. Okay, so that's why its more important part is to interconnecting between both the cerebral hemisphere, because cerebral part is now enlarged even more, and that's why we have to continuously joint all those. Okay, next is ventricles. Ventricles are the cavities of the hemisphere, and these cavities are present in between the hemispheres, so can we can clearly identify that okay, this part is different from that part. Okay, they have separated with the septum like structure which is called as septum pellucidum, and lined by the ciliated, and that is called ependyma. There is some ciliated structure is also present. Okay, so I mentioned here some marks. like CRB, red color mark are here on the picture. CRB means cerebrum region. Next, CC, this is corpus callosum, and this portion connect both the uh, portions of the hemisphere. Okay. Next one is V for ventricles. There are two V I mentioned here, ventricle region. Okay. And one is HPT, just near to the V. This HPT is hypothalamus. And after this HPT, hypothalamus, you can see here PT. PT means it is for pituitary. Okay, pituitary is an endocrine gland. You most of the time you read about it. Then MB for midbrain. Okay, and there are another name also here mentioned, pons, medulla, and CBL for cerebellum. Okay, now coming to the choroid plexus. Choroid plexus is what? Choroid plexus is a nerve, complex nerve structure, and it secretes some fluid, and that is called as CSF or cerebrospinal fluid. That cerebrospinal fluid is removed by some lymph channels and roots of spinal nerves. In the higher vertebrate, it is removed by the cluster that is called arachnoid villi. And I told you in the previous slides that there are three layers: pia mater, arachnoid, and dura mater. I explained pia mater and dura mater at that time, but I told you that arachnoid we will discuss later. So this is arachnoid villi. Okay. Next, what is the function of the choroid plexus? Choroid plexus protect us from the brain injury and exchange some metabolites here. One more thing I want to discuss here, that actually why they exchange metabolites, because brain does not directly get energy as we gain, like we gain from the blood, but brain does not. They have some special type of cells that are astrocytes. Okay, so that's why. Now second portion of brain, forebrain, that is diencephalon. Diencephalon have optic chiasma, that is site for the optic nerve origin. That's why we can see, we have a vision process, means this is related to the eyes. Next one is pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is an endocrine gland. You very well know about it, so I'm not discussing here more. Succus vasculosus. Succus vasculosus is used for the sense organ, and they connect with the cerebellum. When they get signal, when there is some senses some things, then it shifts through the cerebellum. Epithalamus. Epithalamus is upper portion, roof portion, and it have two parts, pineal and parapineal. Pineal is epiphysis region, whereas parapineal is parietal, means at the side. Pineal is absent in mygine means lower animals, lower vertebrates, and adult of the like crocodile, aramidal, uh, Sirenians are mammals. Okay, and edentates are also mammals. Okay, so in these pineal is also absent, but in case of human, pineal is present. Okay, and pineal's most of important role in us related to the our biological clock, biological rhythm. Okay, because it is photosensory. So pineal and parapineal are photoreceptors here mentioned. Okay, so these are related to photoreceptors, and pineal is an endocrine gland. Next, hypothalamus. Thalamus. Thalamus is the largest portion in the diencephalon, and they contain nuclei, third ventricle, and increase in size as in as it evolved in the originated in the higher vertebrates. Okay, so its portion is continuously enlarging, because whenever they get signal and they have to interpret them, they have to store them, then they have obviously large size. So that's why important portions related to the thinking, related to the storing languages, memorizing, these parts get enlarged, and one of them is thalamus is there. Hypothalamus is the floor portion of this diencephalon, and it contains third ventricle, autonomic nervous system, because its autonomic nervous system is related to the our sympathetic and parasympathetic parts. Okay, like sympathy. Okay, so its anterior portion is related to the works of the parasympathetic. Okay, means here parasympathetic nervous system works, but posterior region is related to the sympathetic nervous system. Now midbrain or mesencephalon. Midbrain have one pair of optic lobe. You can see that we have two eyes. Okay, vertebrates have two eyes. So one pair of the optic lobe, it is related to the mesencephalon, and optic reflexes center receive fibers from the retina, so we can see. That's why we have visual activity. Well developed in birds, because birds have pre-predating capacity, and that's why those who are good predator, their eye or their visual activity is uh, more developed. Okay, so that's why here eyes are well developed. One pair auditory lobes are also present there. They receive impulses from the membranous labyrinth, means it is related to the vibratory stimuli. Okay, and sometimes these example are, I mentioned them here wrongly, lesna and cochlea. Okay, this is cochlea is present in like our internal ear, and it helps to the hearing. Okay, so hearing, visualizing, looking, these portions are related to the midbrain. Ventricles, large and hollow in fishes and amphibian. Okay, but in case of higher vertebrates, ventricle not hollow and restricted to a narrow cerebral aqueduct, and that's why whenever you see those animals, then you'll find that all these structures are collapsed like structures. Okay, means they all have collapsed, they all have jointed more come closer. Okay, now last portion is hindbrain. Hindbrain have two parts, as I discussed you in the first slide, that metencephalon and melencephalon. There are some structures also present like medulla oblongata. It merges with the spinal cord and relaying signals. Cerebellum, it is the dorsal evacuated portion, and it's large in the higher animals, and it is related to the our body posture, means it identify that how we are standing, how we are sleeping, and what we are doing. Sometimes we are unconscious, or we are get some convulsion, or if are uh, we are facing some coma structure, coma pressure, then we just lay on the earth. So that all related to the this cerebellum portion, because cerebellum portion can control our posture, okay, and balance. Next is vagal lobe. Vagal lobe is anterior part of medulla, and it have visceral solitaries because here sensory receptors send some signals related to the visceral organs. Okay, so that's why it is called as visceral solitaries. So sensory nucleus is present here, and one more sense like taste is also present here. Whenever we find that, okay, this thing is sweet, this is sour, this is bitter, so how can we identify? These all are based on the taste sense, which is present here in the vagal lobe. Next one is trapezoid body. Trapezoid body relays some impulses for the sound. Okay, fourth ventricle is here. As I discussed to you in the first uh, uh, slide of the parts of the brain, where I mentioned that first, second, and third ventricle were present in the telencephalon and diencephalon, whereas fourth ventricle is present in the hindbrain. Okay, so there are four type of ventricles. Next one is pyramids of medulla and pons. These portions are also present there, and I mentioned in the picture before uh, before diagram. Okay, these portions are present just near to the brain stem. Okay, so these have fibers which crossing the voluntary motors impulses from one side to the another, and that's why their process is more fast. Restiform bodies. Actually, restiform bodies is important in fishes and important in lower vertebrates. These are works for the reflex center and maintain equilibrium in fishes. As I told you that our posture is controlled by the cerebellum, right? So it is also related to the posture or balancing. So same in the maintaining the equilibrium in the fishes is controlled by the restiform bodies, but restiform bodies is not present in the higher vertebrates. Okay, so now lecture is completed. Hope you will enjoy, and thanks. If you have any query, then comment below. Okay, thank you.